Hello guys and welcome to Crypto Assets Daily, episode 1. This will be a series on this channel where I go over the cryptocurrency market and some certain crypto assets. I'll be doing some TA and I'll be giving you my opinion on price and what I think would happen in the near future or in long term, so on. So let's start off with CoinMarketCap and let's look at the market as a whole. We are at 65.6% BTC dominance. The last few days was a bit higher, so it's gone down a little bit since then, but nothing too crazy. Market cap still around 250 bill. It's been that way for quite a while now. Let's go ahead and look at the market. So overall we can see that it's fairly green. Fairly green. So it's a positive day today. And looking at the main cryptocurrency assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, they're also in the green. With Ethereum and XRP, it's mostly sideways, whereas with Bitcoin, we have a little bit of a upwards movement. We have some big gainers today, so some coins have actually gained quite a bit in the last 24 hours. And yeah, as a whole, market's pretty green. There's some coins that are losing, but not so many of them. Mostly it's going up as of now. Okay, well, let's go into charts. So we'll be going over trading view charts. So I'm going to talk mostly about BTC, or at least the longest about BTC, and then I'm going to go into Ethereum and XRP. Just to be absolutely transparent, I have investments in all of these assets, and I have exposure in all of them. So I'm not being biased towards any asset. I'm being as unbiased as I could be. What I see on the chart is what I'm going to tell you guys. So starting with BTC, we had this capitulation event, and this is what we had with the whole market. Okay, we had this capitulation event, basically the big pandemic scare, and we saw it on all of the financial markets. I mean, if you see gold and silver sell off, it's not just like that. Everything was selling off, and BTC and the crypto asset market was no exception. So we saw a pretty nasty, pretty heinous move to the downside, off of which we actually bounced and we ran up towards the BTC halving. And since then, we've been basically consolidating around this space in this area right here. So what we did with this uptrend is we formed a trend line that we bounced off a few times now. So I do end up using trend lines here and there, but only when applicable, and only when these trend lines are actually important enough to draw them. You probably have seen a lot of traders that use a bunch of lines and they have them cross each other and so on, and it just looked ridiculous. I don't know how people take those guys seriously. Usually what I do is I do trend lines, but only on certain only when applicable, only when these trend lines look important enough, and I don't just draw trend lines out of thin air. So obviously this trend line is pretty important, and what we're doing now is we're retesting it. I don't like this song. There we go. Something a bit better. Let's lower it down a little bit. Okay. So this trend line is actually pretty damn important, I'd say. And what we have here, and what we are forming here between this trend line and this trend line, is an ascending triangle. And an ascending triangle with a horizontal resistance nonetheless, which is actually a pretty bullish pattern. Usually, typically these patterns end up breaking to the upside, especially when the pattern has formed coming from an uptrend, as we did. We came from this uptrend, and then we started forming this consolidation pattern in basically this ascending triangle. If I have to guess, I'd say that there is around an 80% chance of this breaking to the upside and only a 20% chance of this breaking to the downside. I'd say that's fair to say. And why am I so confident that this will break to the upside? Well, because we have this huge support right here. What we have here is a bit of I'd call it a trifecta of support. Basically what we have is we have this trend line, we have the support box, and on top of all that as well, we have this EMA daily ribbon. And the EMA daily ribbon is also a pretty important indicator that I use sometimes, or basically almost always, that shows you where things are going. It acts as support, and it could also act as resistance. When we break above it, we see a little rally. When we break below it, we see a dump. So we're still above it, and now we're retesting it as support. So we have this trifecta here. So that's why I think it's not very likely of us to dump down. Although if we do, I'd say the target for that would be anywhere between 7,000 and 6,000. Anywhere around this box we might end up if we see a dump. And it will be pretty bearish because it will break some very important support lines that we have currently. Looking at the upside though, basically how you measure the target on patterns like this. And by the way, this pattern isn't still 100% confirmed, since we have two touches on the top, but this still isn't a absolute bounce. This hasn't bounced yet. Maybe when it bounces up to like 9.5, you can say, okay, this is obviously a bounce. But this is yet not a bounce. So if it, it could still just break through this, and the pattern won't even form. But I would expect that it will bounce, and I'm going to show you why exactly. Basically how you get targets on patterns like this is you take the bottom to the top of this pattern, and that's how you get your target. So if it breaks to the upside, you'd expect to hit around 12k. If it goes to the downside, you'd expect to hit 6k. And that also coincides basically perfectly with the resistance and support areas that we have here already in place. And especially to the upside, well, if it breaks this resistance between here and 12k, there's basically nothing. It's empty space. So if it breaks 10k, you probably can expect that it's going to just straight up hit 12k after that. I wouldn't be surprised, and things could get very bullish very fast. So this would be the immediate short-term or mid-term sort of price action that I'm expecting. Well, at immediate short-term, I expect us to go and retest 10k. Mid-term, I expect us to actually break out of this and go and head into 12k. And in the long term, what we might see is something that we saw back here. So back here, we saw this run up into this consolidation, into this even bigger, even more parabolic run up. And I don't see a reason why we can't see that now as well. And actually, when you look at it, this consolidation right here looks pretty damn similar to the consolidation we are having right now. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see a big run up to 12 to, as we saw here, to 12, 13, 14K, and we might even go, you know, higher than this box. We might even hit 16, 17. Who knows where the FOMO will take us, because believe me, there will be FOMO if we see something like what we saw around here. Okay, so these are my views on BTC and what I think will happen by the end of this week and moving forward. Now let's get quickly into Ethereum and XRP. So with Ethereum, it's actually the exact same thing. It's basically the exact same chart, the exact same pattern. But the only thing that Ethereum has done differently than BTC is that it seems to be like one step ahead of BTC. And what I mean by that is, when you look at Ethereum and when you look at the same pattern that Ethereum seems to be forming, you can see that Ethereum is actually pretty far in this triangle. Ethereum is like 2/3 into this triangle, if not even a little bit more, whereas BTC is only basically halfway through. So it seems that Ethereum is way further in this triangle, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ethereum actually breaks out first out of this pattern. And another proof that we have that Ethereum is actually a bit ahead on BTC and a bit ahead on this whole move as a whole is looking at the EMA ribbon. And if we look at the actual time where Ethereum broke this EMA ribbon, well, it was around the 17th of April. 16th to 17th of April is when Ethereum broke this EMA ribbon. Going into BTC and going into the exact same thing, well, this happened around the 23rd, 24th of April, so around a week later. So you can say that Ethereum actually led this. Not only that, but this ribbon, it's pretty important when this ribbon flips. And what I mean by flip is when this purple line goes below the ribbon. So when it's above it, the ribbon acts as resistance. When it's below it, the ribbon acts as support. So it's pretty important when this ribbon flips. And we can see that on Ethereum, that happened on the 1st of May. On BTC, that happened on the 7th of May. So again, around 7 days later. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ethereum moves before BTC. And here I told you why I expect this to actually continue bouncing off of this trend line and to continue forming. Well, because it did the exact same thing on Ethereum. Basically down here, it tested it and continued going up, and it's still on this trend line. So that's why I expect it to do the same thing on BTC. I don't see why it should be different. As far as targets go on Ethereum, well, we have a pretty similar thing on Ethereum as we had on BTC. We have this resistance right here, and between it and the next resistance, we basically have nothing. So if we break this resistance, I'd say we could easily head towards the 250, 260 level. And if we break to the downside, I'd say we're probably going to get supported somewhere around this box. But again, things can get very bearish if we break to the downside. So, you know, hopefully we're not going to do that, but it could happen. Now going into XRP, well, XRP is a lot different than BTC and Ethereum. It is actually played off pretty differently because XRP has sadly underperformed compared to those two assets. And we can see that XRP from bottom to top has actually moved 114% from the bottom to the top, and that is, you know, pretty significant. But Ethereum has moved around 150%, as you can see, 154. So it's moved, this 114 is 154. Ethereum has moved 40% more, if my math's correct, than XRP. And we have a similar thing with BTC. It's moved 160% even. So both of these assets have outperformed XRP with around 40-50%, which is a pretty significant percentage. That's why when Ethereum fell down here to retest its trend line, and when BTC fell down here to retest its trend line and its daily EMA, XRP actually fell through the trend line and fell through the EMA, which would be pretty damn bearish. And not only that, but even though we had this nice bullish wick here to the downside, after going up, we got rejected at the trend line and we got rejected at the ribbon. So we couldn't even take over this, at least the daily ribbon. We got rejected and we went down again. So if XRP was an asset moving on its own, and if it wasn't basically tethered to BTC, this would look pretty bearish, and you would expect a further move to the downside, going as low as 16-15 cents maybe. But a very significant thing is that XRP is connected to BTC's price, and basically the whole market is. So whatever BTC does, the whole market will follow. So it doesn't matter that it underperformed and it actually broke through these important trend lines. If BTC bounces up here to 10K and breaks this 10K level and goes all the way to 12K, there is no way that this will happen and XRP will be falling down. If this happens, most likely, even if XRP might still underperform, it's going to hit 23, 24, 25 cent levels. So it all depends on BTC, but we should keep a close eye on XRP as well. And yeah, basically this is everything as a whole. This is what I see in the market. This is what I see in the coming week. Today is Tuesday, so I'd say by the end of the week, I think we might see at least a retest of this 10K level, if not even something more. Depends on what the market decides to do. And yeah, this is it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and peace.